having conversations with myself cause I feel like I have nobody to talk to. I be having conversations with myself cause I feel like I have nobody to turn to. Everything was green light, now we got the red. Could've had somebody else, chose you instead. I be having conversations with myself cause I feel like I have nobody to talk to. Got up in the morning, took a shot, it's the rock. Girl, you left my stomach in a knot. Took my lighter and you burned the bridge. Thought you was a writer, no, you're just an idol. You got me feeling like Big Sean in this 5, 4, 3, 2. I deserve a minute, wait a minute. Gotta get up and over, regain my composure. No longer my lover, finally finished and you did it. Girl, you really showed me. Think with your heart, don't think with your body. Clever. Sorry not sorry, sorry not Justin Timberlake, write me a river. Lately I be having conversations with myself cause I feel like I have nobody to talk to. I be having conversations with myself cause I feel like I have nobody to turn to. Everything was green light, now we got the red. Could've had somebody else, chose you instead. I be having conversations with myself cause I feel like I have nobody to talk to. You tried to convince me it was all in my head, and I felt like it's not you, it's me instead. Hey, I wanted to rock with you, roll with you. Said you was my baby girl, then you left me too. Everything was kosher, perfect like a poster. Then I got word that you wanna leave a picture. Off with somebody else, off with the jerk. With the shame on me, I really thought that it could work. Off with somebody else, off with the loser. Shame on me, I really thought we had a... Lately I be having conversations with myself cause I feel like I have nobody to talk to. I be having conversations with myself cause I feel like I have nobody to turn to. Everything was green light, now we got the red. Could've had somebody else, chose you instead. I be having conversations with myself cause I feel like I have nobody to talk to. Everything was green light, now we got the red. Could've had somebody else, chose you instead. Yeah, lately I be having conversations with myself cause I feel like I have nobody to talk to.
Yeah. Global greetings, Wally and Layamiga. Welcome to another edition of the Topics. Also, want good evening to the rest of the entire Eastern Caribbean. It doesn't matter where you are at the time. Goes further afield, whether you're in England, Africa, Germany, Spain, Russia, China, France. We say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you. From one of those we should fit your time space at this time. Also want to send a very, very strong, powerful prayer to people there in Jamaica who are going through this tough Melissa hurricane time, and also the other affected countries in the Caribbean, just throughout the region. We're one people. So, even though we have been spared here on St. Kitts and Nevis, we do feel and share the pains and sufferings on that side. It's another edition of the Topics. I'm here with my other co-host, Bankie, and we have our very special guest this evening, Honorable Dr. Janice Daniel-Hodge, who will be with us this evening for another engaging and exciting edition of the Topic. So, with that, I want to say good evening, Bankie, and welcome.
Yahsonn, greetings and greetings to the listening audience. Greatly appreciate tuning in on this another Tuesday evening on the Topics. This evening we have in store a very intriguing show. I'm glad you can join us. You could be listening any other media house, so you choose to listen to us. So we greatly appreciate you guys joining us. Let me say good evening to the folks in Layamiga and Oli, which is the traditional name, the ancient name for these two sister island states. So, which if you're first time listener, which means St. Kitts and Nevis. Hopefully one of these days, I mean, with the hope of Dr. Let me say, Janice, we know each other like that. It shouldn't be no problem or think. You understand? Will be the leader of the country one of these days. She's seeking for, and one of these things would advocate that it's changed. Put it only and let make that should be stamping be one of the legal thing. I mean, the thing is owed to the ancestors and those who inhabit this land first. Keep it original. Let me say good evening to also the folks in the neighboring island, Sabre, Statia, the U.S. Virgin Islands, the BVI, St. Martin, Montserrat, also the folks over in Dominica, and throughout the whole Leeward and Windward Island, not forgetting the folks in the diaspora, North America. And before I go into anything else, going through a lot right now. I mean, record-breaking hurricane strength, everything. I just receive some pictures of a hospital area gone. You can't even recognize like a war zone. So sometimes sometimes we feel we're special, but I mean, it's still us. So when one of us gets hurt, we should really care. We all are one. So we're supposed to, and we all, many of us who live here, go to school in Jamaica and have friends and so on. One Caribbean code. These things should really affect, when you affect one, you affect also solidarity with them. And knowing that going through, we could have been going through. Also, let me say the folks also in the different time zones, especially in Europe and China, wherever you're at. Greatly appreciate you guys tuning in every morning. Good afternoon. Thanks. Looking to this doing. Welcome to the topics for the first time. Hopefully, it won't be the last. Can you hear me?
Hi. Yes, good evening, and thank you so much for having
Yahsonn,
me on.
your mic's stuck. I hear you. You speak again. Let me see if I couldn't hear you. Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry about that. Good evening, Janice, and welcome to the topics. We give you an opportunity to share your opening remarks.
Thank you. Good evening to you. Good evening to Bankie and to all who are listening at home here in Nevis, across the diaspora. It's been long overdue, I think, being on the topics with you guys, but it's never too late to have an impact. I'm happy for the opportunity. Sad at this time because of what's happening in Jamaica. My heart goes out to, our brothers and sisters there. I think, it could have been any one of us. And so we must all share and try to begin the efforts to do whatever we can to help them during this difficult time. I also want to say, to those who are listening, I hope that we can have a very engaging show this evening. There are lots of interesting topics to discuss. The NRP, we are certain that, there is a lot to be said, a lot to be done. We are aware that the people in Nevis are not necessarily going through our best times right now. Too many issues, too many deceptions, and it's really time for the people of Nevis to be able to look forward and have hope to the kind of leadership that would take them, to the years coming forward. And so I look forward to engaging with you this evening and to the rest of the audience who may want to call in.
So, Janice Daniel-Hodge, environmental science.
Yep.
Banker.
Yahsonn, let me put out for the first hour. We'll be reasoning with Miss Hodge, and then after the first hour, then we can accept calls and say that at least give her time to answer some question and while we reason and stuff like that, and then make everything in sync. But just want to put that inside there.
Yes, no problem, definitely. So, folks who are listening, for the first hour, we will go through the discussion and give the Honorable Janice Daniel-Hodge an opportunity to share whatever information and, respond to questions that we pose. And then in the second hour, we will give you that opportunity to call in and weigh in and ask your questions and or question anything that probably was presented. So, like I was saying initially before that, I was saying, Janice Daniel-Hodge, environmental scientist, banker, and now political leader of the Nevis Reformation Party. In this edition, we're going to explore her journey, her leadership vision, her thoughts on some of the pressing national matters that we are dealing with at this point. So, Janice, for those who may not know your full story, how would you describe who Janice Daniel-Hodge is beyond the title and politics?
Well, it could take some time, but just to keep it tight, what I would say is that I grew up here on Nevis. I have a passion and love for the environment, for the ocean. I am the daughter of the late Right Excellent Dr. Sir Simeon Daniel, who was someone who people really considered to be a very compassionate, caring, and visionary type of leader. And I think growing up around him, I got to see firsthand what it was like to see people struggling and doing the best that you can to help them. And for me, it really came about around the time of COVID when I recognized how the people of Nevis were struggling, especially our young women, a lot of single mothers who are dependent on the hospitality industry for their livelihoods. And we know that, the hotels were closed and women were struggling. And it just, was very heartbreaking to see how dismissive our premier was during that time. And I realized that people are struggling and better can be done. And I felt that the people of Nevis really deserve a leader who is caring, somebody who is compassionate. And I think throughout my career, I have been someone who, grew up with the understanding that nobody's better than anybody else. Do the best that you can to help your brothers and your sisters. And try to ensure that once you have done your best, then you can feel satisfied that you have made a contribution. And so I would have spent quite some time doing work with the fishers. I would have spent some time working in as chairman in the banking industry. I would have formed a consulting company, environmental consulting company, and would have spent at least over 20 years in Nevis looking at development projects, doing impact assessment reports, etc. But really my love for the ocean would draw me close to the marine environment. And so I sort of have a love for my community. I think that's one of the reasons why I actually live in Newcastle, because of my love for the marine environment and recognizing that oftentimes we make decisions that affect people who many consider to be less than, and so they don't really get a voice around the table. And so, whenever I experience something like that, I have this urge and this tug to, be the voice for these people, because I have the ability and the capacity to speak on their behalf and try to, minimize some of the struggles that they would be having. And so COVID was really a turning point for me, seeing how people were struggling. And based on what I understand with the way that the global environment is operating right now, with all of the issues with climate change and the way that we would need to look at food security differently. I just felt that this was basically the opportune time for me to continue to contribute and continue to assist, but now take it on a much larger stage so that the entire population in Nevis can benefit from having a leader who would want to put the people's interest first. I think that is something that we have been lacking. We see it over and over again. And I think it's time that the people of Nevis feel respected once again. and can look forward to having a leader that would represent their interests and not, looking at self-interest, etc. So in a
Okay,
nutshell,
so
yeah.
okay, so I realize that you would have gone a bit further, but um, I want to take you back a little bit. Um, can you share with us a little bit about your upbringing? What was life like growing up in Nevis as the daughter of Dr. Simeon Daniel, one of the island's founding fathers? Share with us a little bit of that, a little bit of that back story.
Yeah, it was really a sort of a bittersweet childhood. I mean, like most of my friends, I grew up in Brown Hill, the village of Brown Hill. I went to the Prospect Primary School, well, the Ivor Waters Primary School now. And so with my father so much into politics, he was gone quite a bit. But one thing I would say is that, he was always willing to have us tag along with him. And I can recall driving around the island with him, and he would always, blow his horn when he come across people. He would stop, he would have a conversation with them, find out what their struggles are, find out what he can do to help them. And I have been at the bitter end sometimes because, sometimes he would make promises to us, and he would then decide that he would want to help someone else. And, when we would ask, but, Daddy, how come you said you were going to do this? And he said, but, these people need it more than you do. And so he's somebody who really has a love for Nevis and the people of Nevis. And so growing up around him, it was, Nevis first. Nevis is our first priority. We must ensure that, we look after people, we look after each other. And like I said, he was always willing to stop and have a conversation. And it was, sometimes listening to those conversations that you get a understanding of what would be necessary in order to have an impact and to change people's lives. It was during those years that I really understood what it was to put people first, put people ahead of yourself. And I have to say, during the time when he was in politics, when his first priority was Nevis, um, we know it, he had some rough times there dealing with St. Kitts and some um, issues that he would not necessarily want to see continue forever. And so I think now it is time for us to look at how we can work for the best interest of our people. United we stand, divided we fall. We're a small country. There are ways that we can benefit from the pluses on either side. And so as we progress and we recognize the importance of working with each other, at the end of the day, once you put people first and you recognize that your job is here to serve people and to help them in ways that they cannot help themselves, I think that is something that I would have learned. I do have a strong love for Nevis, and I am definitely certain that I got that from growing up around my father and seeing the love that he had for Nevis and for the people of Nevis. Not hearing you.
Yes, sorry, Mike. Janice, try and stay in the center of the screen so the folks can see your beautiful face. Don't shift too much to the side. Just like that. Keep it right there. Keep the smile just like that. Yeah, nice and warm.
All right.
Beautiful. All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So,
man.
my
Yes,
bad.
and
Yeah, my bad. I was saying, you have a strong background in environmental science and banking. But what is it that drew you to those fields?
Well, environmental management from going to school, I was attracted to the field, to the environmental field. I remember doing my master's degree. And during that time, we had, there were lots of oil spills. And it just so happened that the environment that I was in at the time, there was a lot of talk about how we can protect the environment, how we can probably be innovative in ways to help to clean up the environment from these oil spills, etc. And so I kind of, grew interested in that. Now, I was told a story at one time that my father growing up, I had an older brother and my older sister. And I remember he said, well, one would be the doctor and one would be the lawyer. And I said, well, what am I going to be? And he said, you can be whatever you want to be. At the time, I didn't really like the answer. But in time, I've come to recognize that, he probably recognized that I could be whatever I wanted to be. And he just allowed me to develop into my own self. And so I think to the extent, for a short period of time, my father was the Minister of Environment in the federal government. And I don't know if somewhere subliminally, that kind of piqued my interest a little bit more. Because, as young girls, you want to please your dad. And, I at the time, I wasn't aware of the circumstances under which he became Minister of Environment after having served as Minister of Finance. But nonetheless, he served in that area. And it may have been, one of the factors that contributed to my getting involved in that area. And so I just grew in that area. I worked in the U.S. Virgin Islands for a long period of time, in the environmental field as well, coastal zone management, etc. And then I came and I started my consulting company and have been able to interact with a lot of people. Maybe I am not somebody who would want to be in the office from 8 to 5. I like to be out in the field, looking at nature, enjoying nature, that sort of thing. And so being in the environmental field, that really just meshed with my personality, my love for the open air, the environment, the ocean, and all that sort of thing. And so I've continued in that path. As far as banking is concerned, I would have served as a director at the Bank of Nevis for some time, and over 10 years, I would have served as chairperson at the Bank of Nevis for a period of time. And I would think one of my major accomplishments there was having served as, not only served as director, as chairperson of the bank, but also as chairperson of the building committee. And so the new building that you see there now, if you can recall, the Bank of Nevis was just at the wooden structure in the first instance. And so it gave me a sense of pride to know that, my father was involved in establishing the Bank of Nevis. And then decades after, I was able to come and contribute to the growth and expansion of the bank in that way. So it really, sort of came full circle for me. A lot of what I do, was really influenced by spending time around my father and him giving not just me, but his children the feeling that you can do whatever you want to do. And he used to have a saying, what man has done, man can do. If he were alive today, you'd probably say what man has done, woman can do, right? And so just understanding that there were no boundaries as to what we can do, what we can try to accomplish. And so I really do value the impact that he, would have had on my life and shaping the person that I am today.
So, okay. So how did your international professional experience shape your outlook on the development and governance in small island states like?
Well, I spent some time in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and one of the things that I was tasked with doing was to establish a marine park. And when I got to the program, I was told that for over 30 years, the Virgin Islands government was trying to establish a territorial marine park. And I started doing the research and trying to find out what would be necessary in order to get this marine park established. And one of the things I soon recognized is that the area that the marine park was to be established in had a lot of different users. There were fishers, there were scientists, recreational users. And what was happening was that the fishers who can get very rowdy at times were being ignored over and over again because it just appeared that their voice did not matter. You know, you needed to establish a park and the fishers would just need to come along. And I think recognizing what was happening and taking the time to actually sit with the fishers, find out what would work for them and what would not work for them, I was able to make the advances to get the marine park established. And I would say to you that getting a marine park established in the Virgin Islands was not easy because you have the executive branch of government and then you had to get it approved by the legislative branch. And if you know anything about the senators in the US Virgin Islands, they are very concerned about their votes and they don't want to upset anybody. And as I mentioned, the fishers had loud voices, but their voices were being ignored. What I was able to do was to bring everybody to the table, the fishers, the scientists, academia, you know, people from the university, different beachgoers, etc., and listen to everybody, recognizing that everybody has a story to tell, everybody has some value to add to the table, and I was able to have that honor, and I actually received a presidential award for my efforts in establishing the first territorial marine park in the U.S. Virgin Islands. So just, you know, exposure, seeing how different people do things, recognizing that everybody has a voice and you need to hear everybody. I think that came, you know, going back to the days of being around my father and how he embraced everybody. I mean, if you guys know my dad, and as much as he was the first premier of Nevis and posthumously awarded national hero, you know, you would see him walking down the street and he would never act as if he doesn't have the time of day for you. He would stop and he would have a conversation with everybody and anybody because everybody has something to add, some value to add. And I think that helped me to recognize in my professional development that once everybody has a chance to contribute, to say something, then you can have much more effective results. And if I dare say, I'm not seeing much of that now, where people are being listened to. You know, people are asked to speak, but they're just asked to speak to check a box. They're not asked to speak because their input is considered valuable. And that I think is one of the reasons why we're not able to advance the way that we want to advance. Because, you know, you look at different perspectives and, you know, I could speak to Bankie about, you know, agriculture. I can speak to you and you would have different perspectives. I may look at it from a different perspective. And so if you're going to make decisions just based from one perspective, it is not going to be sustainable. You want to be able to include everybody's opinion, let everybody understand why you would have to make compromises. And once people understand, you're not going to be able to make everybody happy, but at least you'll be able to understand why a decision was made, the way that it was made, then we can all collaborate and be much more effective in that way.
Well, I think your last comment kind of led into the question that I had, the follow-up question I had, which is, what lessons did you take from your father's legacy that still guides you today? What what are some of those lessons that you took from your father's legacy that still guides you?
Yeah, well, like I said, you know, he was somebody who embraced everybody. He never looked at people and felt that anybody was less than. He often used to say, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." And I think that's a lesson if we live our lives that way, knowing that the way you treat people is the way that you would want them to treat you, then I think that would take us a very long way. And again, you know, the sky is the limit. You know, never feel that you cannot accomplish or anything is beyond your reach. And I can recall he actually had a banner made that he had in his office, you know, what man has done, what man has done, man can do. And, you know, those are the types of lessons that he would instill in us And, self-determination, I think, was a major one, because as much as he fought for Nevis and for Nevis to be able to determine its own destiny, I think he instilled the same sort of principles in us, in that, we ought to be able to determine in which direction we would want to go. And, something that he used to say to me that I say to my sons is, do what you have to do until you can do what you want to do. And so sometimes you may have to make sacrifices, that is part of life. But understanding that we are all equal in the eyes of God, and we are here to help each other as much as we can. And so I think those lessons of self-determination, do not let anybody take you down a path where you do not want to go. Education was something that he considered to be very important, and I think that is one of the reasons why I actually went back to university, and got my PhD. And I did that in an effort to be side by side with my younger son, because he was getting ready to start college, and I felt that I wanted to do all that I can do to ensure that he would complete his college degree. And so, I looked at the program at the university, and I said, I can do this degree. And so I was able to enroll myself. At the same time, I enrolled him. And so he didn't really have that many opportunities to slip through the cracks, so to speak. Um, when you look at what my father stood for, um, you know, nobody's better than anybody. And that ties back into the fact that, you do unto each other as you would have them do unto you, etc. So he was a very humble person, cared for everybody, loved everybody. And, those are the things that I think drive me today. When I see people being scorned at, when I see people being disrespected, and that that is not the way that it ought to be. As a leader, and as a servant of the people, you must be able to listen to people and hear their concerns, because if you don't, how do you know how best to help them? And so I think that ability to listen to people, no matter their status in life, is something that is very important in a leadership role, and especially in a small island such as Nevis, where we pretty much know most people, and sometimes you know people, but you don't know what their struggles are. And if you don't take the time to stop and listen, then you would just assume. And one thing I learned a long time ago, the worst thing that you can do is to feel that you are helping someone, and then they will say to you, well, I did not ask for that help. I didn't want you to help me that way. So it's important to try to figure out what help people really need, so that you can address their needs rather than doing what you think they would want you to do for them.
Nice. What is it that inspired your transition from a private career, which you seem to have a wonderful career, to into active politics?
Well, like I said, seeing people struggling and knowing that more could be done, and the leaders are not responding to the needs of the people. Um, when we look, for example, at some of the issues that we have to deal with, when you look at how long we've been playing around with geothermal, and people have to pay these high electricity bills, you wonder why there isn't more effort in trying to reduce the cost of electricity for people, not just for single parents who have to, have the electricity to help their children with their schoolwork, etc. But the small businesses are struggling significantly. And to see that Nevis was already on the path to renewable energy. You know, we had the wind farm that was providing 20% of our energy from renewables. And today we're down to zero. We are 100% dependent on fossil fuel, which we have no control over. And so, you know, as the price fluctuates in the global market, we have to bear that cost. And I just know that with the right focus on taking action to help better the lives of people, we can accomplish a lot more. I don't think that there is enough focus. When we look at the complaints that we keep hearing, what people are struggling with, and you would notice that under this CCM government, there has been no effort to even look at a short-term plan to reduce the cost of electricity. All over the Caribbean, we see people are speaking about solar energy. Some are looking at wind energy. And like I said, we are stuck and waiting on geothermal, which we know is a long-term solution. We cannot have the people of Nevis struggling and suffering until geothermal comes, if it comes, right? So what is being done in the meantime? And when you look at the leadership and just sitting back and waiting and not taking any action, you tell yourself, come on, you know, much better can be done. Because once you can address the cost of electricity, there's so many other factors that you can deal with that. We look at the small businesses and how they're struggling. They can't afford to hire someone because the electricity bill is so high. And when you look at the entire community struggling from this one issue, and you look at a government that can boast about how many times they have won and won and won and won, but what have they done to improve the lives of people? You're not seeing that effort, right? And so we look at some of the disparities between our people here in Nevis compared to St. Kitts. You know, we see that Prime Minister Drew would have spoken about free tertiary education. Our people in Nevis, our students cannot say that they are, you know, fully benefiting from that, because in order to get to St. Kitts, they have to deal with the transportation cost. And our government has not seen it fit to provide transportation for our students to get over to St. Kitts. And believe it or not, there are some students who are unable to take advantage of the free college education because they cannot afford to go over to St. Kitts. They give you a stipend for a couple of days, and then it's up to you to figure out how you're going to get over for the rest of the days. And that is not acceptable. We know that education, like I said, it's a priority for the NRP government. You see in the efforts that was made with the sixth form college, you know, we heard the premier speak about establishing a community college. But as usual, just another empty promise. Speak of so many things that, you know, they can do, but they can't deliver on anything. And, you know, I mean, I had a conversation with a young man, and he was telling me about his day, but he would have to wake up in the morning and do like from 5 o'clock in order to be able to catch the boat to go over to start his class at 9 o'clock. Right? All of these struggles going back and forth with the boat, etc. You cannot say that you are on par. You know, you're at a disadvantage when you have to deal with those hardships. When you look at what's happening with the dialysis, I mean, it is very painful. And we speak about it because we know that people struggle. We have seen people die. Just this year, we have seen people die from lack of care. And what really bothers me is when the premier can tell you he's having these collaborative meetings and he's working with the prime minister in St. Kitts. But then the prime minister in St. Kitts is going to tell you that he has dialysis equipment to back up the ones that he's using. In fact, the other day I heard the prime minister said that he had so many dialysis equipment that he could give away. And when you have your leaders who are going to see our people, rough seas can prevent somebody from getting over to St. Kitts for treatment. The Premier doesn't see it as worthwhile to establish dialysis treatment in Nevis. It's not every day that you can get over to St. Kitts for dialysis treatment. What are the considerations for those things? And so, like I say, I just see that there's too much struggling and too much ignoring of the concerns of the people. And I just felt compelled to get involved and to do better
Yahsonn.
for our people.
Yahsonn, you could hear me?
Yes.
Huh? I wasn't sure.
Yes.
Okay, let me get to Miss Hall where she was speaking about healthcare. My take is, what is the, let's say the election is due coming up soon, probably within next year, the posted time, due time within 2027. What are some of the plans if the NRP are if the NRP happen to win the next election locally coming up? What will be some of the plans for NRP when it comes to the healthcare system of earlier that the Premier is not dealing with, and also when it comes to providing work in an economy which is very stagnant? What are some of the plans that you have in place that people have, that you want guarantee the people that place?
Right. So with regard to healthcare, and we find ourselves in this situation where the current administration, they would take on a project and then, just abandon it. They don't have the follow through in order to get it completed. Now, as it is right now with the hospital, we know that it started wrong. We did not have the necessary expertise to design the hospital in the first place. And so we would have to undertake an assessment of where we are with that expansion wing right now. The hospital itself is aged. We know that there's very little that you can do with regards to even improving and modernizing the hospital. And so we would have to take an assessment of what is on the ground. And as I have said before, a brand new hospital is not off the table, because we keep trying to patch up and fix the Alexandria Hospital. And each time you fix one problem, there is a different problem with it. Now, I spoke earlier about the disparities between St. Kitts and Nevis. So St. Kitts to speak about a brand new smart hospital. So why can't Nevis speak about a new hospital that we are in dire need of, right? And so if it is that the expansion cannot be completed for the purpose in which it was originally intended, then we would have to repurpose that building and look at the overall, status of the health facilities and make a determination going forward. The problem that we have is that the Premier is very, for lack of a better word, secretive. And so even when there was supposed to be a surveyor's report that could have probably given us a head start in terms of what would be required, that was not provided. There was supposed to be a Taiwanese group doing some technical assessments. We have not heard anything about that. And so we really are at a loss as to what is the status of our healthcare right now. Now, one of the problems why I think that we are at such a loss and the economy is at a standstill is because when you look at all of the things that were supposed to be done when we had the CBI money coming in and weren't done, when the money was being wasted, we recognize that if the projects that were to be done were actually completed, then we wouldn't seem to be in such a dire strait for creating jobs right now. Because when you look at, for example, if that hospital were completed, the expansion, you could see where you would have jobs for our students coming out of school, for our doctors to go away, to come back. But right now, the facility is not in place for them. We spoke about the community college that the Premier mentioned that he would get established. That has not happened. Now imagine a community college where you can hire people, across the board, from janitors to, professors, maintenance people. So many opportunities there if they were able to deliver on the things that they said they would. They spoke about a poultry processing plant. If that poultry processing plant was established, how many people could be working there today? And so we have seen where, the incompetence of the government. They recognize they want to start a project. Look at the airport expansion project. That was supposed to be started in March and completed. How many people were supposed to be getting jobs there? And so when we see the failures of the government in terms of not delivering on what they're supposed to deliver on, that is why you're going to hear the Premier speaking now about people, students coming out of school, and what is he going to tell them? If they completed all of these projects that they were supposed to complete, they would have jobs for the people, and they would not have to make those compromises.
Yeah, so let's say in the next 2 years, this project still ain't finished. So that's why I'm asking the question, what will you do different? Where if guys, it seems like this hospital ain't going to finish no time soon. As you can see, the year is basically finished, going to go into 2026. It's not going to finish within a year time. No care how much, unless you're going to work on it 24/7 and I'm going to break it down and start from scratch. So that's what I'm asking. What is your plan with all these projects that is there in starting all this? Because then once you're there, you have to set the tone and to make sure you're the leader of the country. What will you drive the economy? Because the economy, as I say, is stagnant. So that's what I want to know. We see what's going on now, So we want to know what will the NRP leadership and its cabinet do to boost the economy. How can agriculture for one, if you speak to anyone in the agriculture sector, the fisher folk, the most often ask for finance and stuff like that. What will be different under your leadership when it comes to all these different sectors? Because that is what the people want to hear. What will you do different?
Yes,
you see?
Yes, and so one thing that the NRP has always said is that under my leadership and the background and experience that I have, we're able to bring a new vision to the people of Nevis with regards to how we will develop the economy of Nevis. And, we spoke about the need for looking at let's say we look at our blue economy, for example. Right now, the fishers are not able to fish the way that they are supposed to because the infrastructure is not in place. We have to be able to ensure that you have modern facilities, not only for the fishers to be able to fish, but also to create new jobs. You would recall that in the NRP government, we had a fully approved fisheries complex. And so when we look at what is happening now, we're not seeing any new industries, nothing with regards to aquaculture, nothing with regards to the type of boosting crop farming, etc. Now, the fisheries complex, that is something that is essential. We're surrounded by water. We deal with a lot of fishing. When we look at our imports, for example, we import fish burgers, we import fish sticks, we import all of these different fish products. The tourists come here because they want to enjoy fresh seafood. Our people want fresh seafood. So we need to put the facilities in place. That fisheries complex must come back. We must develop an aquaculture industry where we can feed into the fisheries complex and minimize on our import. There are lots of things that we import right now that we do not have to import.
With the fisheries project, which will because this is something that's been going on for a while. I mean, I've been to fisheries meeting with different people, CM members and stuff like that, where people stand up and say, going there. I know you're supposed to go where some were recommending they buy the Johnite property and different stuff. I've been in some of these meetings, where will be the ideal place where a fisheries project gonna go, which actually have a pier that have ice and people can gas up because Nevis don't have no port. I drive every morning and see all these trucks by this gas station with all these water tanks filling up for gases and then have to offload them in all different ways. So where will be an ideal area to have something like this?
Well, the original project, the original site was down at the Gallows Bay area. And the concerns that came about for that area, it really wasn't sufficient to prevent the project from going forward. It was just simply where the government did not want to carry on the project because they felt it was an NRP project. And that is very unfortunate. But it is not difficult to establish because once you start looking at fisheries complex, what I'm saying is, as you develop the blue economy, you need to develop the infrastructure. We need to put in the ramps. We do not have a ramp around Nevis at this point in time. So, a hurricane is coming, rough seas are coming, the water taxi operators, the fishers, everybody has to be trying to get a backhoe and a truck and all these other things, right? We have to develop the industry. We have to make a concerted effort to develop the industry and create jobs for people in the meantime. So these activities that we are speaking about, if you look at just the blue economy aspect of it, there are a number of job opportunities that can be created. We can definitely reduce our food import bill. And another area that we have been looking at, Bankie, you would be aware of how much mango we have here that goes to waste. What is wrong with us setting up a mango corporation, a mango industry, where we don't just have the mango festival or the mango fair? You actually have an industry where you collect these mangoes, you process these mangoes, you make the different mango products that we can export. We speak about cruise ships coming in, and what do we have that is authentically Nevis to sell? If the cruise ships are not coming here, because Nevis is in such a position right now, we have to be able to look at projects that we can get in and get off the ground within a short period of time. And that's one of the problems that I find that we are struggling with right now. Long-term projects are long-term projects, but nothing is being done in the short term to really stimulate and boost the economy. So we definitely can capitalize on our mango resources. We speak about capitalizing on our natural resources, right? The other
You mentioned
party they
mango.
speak
You
about.
mentioned mango there earlier. I just wanted to
Mhm.
you mentioned mango. At the agro processing plant, there's a mango pulper. So it's amazing. This mango season went out and there haven't been one mango being pulped. We have a pound of mango. We have the mango food festival went, and there was no mango in this in the freezer. There's a whack in the freezer. There's no reason why the machine shouldn't be running where you have all these way. And this mango season was a long mango season, yes, and it. You see all these mangoes all over the place. So I could know over why when you have a mango food festival where you don't have no mango pulp, and this is one thing. Can they still have a beer factory here that make the pulp, and then there are people within the region who want our mango pulp. The hotels them want it. There was a shipment of 500 pounds went to Anguilla at one time, but it didn't keep up these things. So as you say, a mango factory, whatever it is, we don't have no small factories, and it could be other factories the same. When we have avocado season, you can have to make the oils and different stuff. So it's just to put the right people things in place. If you want to go into these things, it means you can still just mention have mango orchards. We can have X amount. You can step with the mangoes, them when pulping them, the emipali the Julie mango, so you have different flavors of pulp and those that you mix in a sense like that. But you seem to be on the right path when it comes to agriculture and stuff like that.
Yes, because you see, like I said, we have to capitalize on our natural resources. And with so much mango in abundance, we're known for mango. And when you go to some of these different places, and you see, if you look at Grenada, for example, how they process their spices, and that contributes significantly to their GDP. Why can't we capitalize on our mango and have that as our trademark? You see, in Atlanta, they have the peach, and everything for them is about the peach. In Hawaii, they have the Dole pineapple, etc. You know, why should we have to be going to the supermarket buying mango chunks and all of these things, right? So, and when you set up a mango corporation, it provides jobs across a cross section of the community, because you're looking at people who are going to be involved in the branding and the packaging and the marketing and, you know, the financial aspects of it. I mean, it's a brand new industry, which I think is sustainable. And this is something we don't have to buy the mangoes. At some point, you know, we will want to be able to have people bring the mangoes in, and, you know, they get some compensation for bringing them in, and we process them. We want to be able to have your mango cakes, your mango tarts, your mango jams, etc. And like I say, start importing, exporting, you know, some of these items. The other area that I think would be critical for us to look at, Bankie, has to do with our human resources and our natural talent. And when we look at the amount of athletes that we are able to produce here, we do not have we do not have facilities for the blue economy, for the fishers, for the farmers. We do not have facilities for our youths, for them to develop their sporting skills, right? And so when we look at developing a multi-purpose indoor sporting complex, we cannot arrange a tournament between Nevis and Sinkis for basketball, because if they come over and it rains, everything gets squashed. The vendors who come out to make some money can't make some money, nothing. So we need to develop the proper facilities. We have our swimmers who are, you know, gone as far as to the Olympics. We do not have a indoor swimming pool to assist them. So imagine having a multi-purpose indoor sporting facility. Can you imagine the amount of people who will be employed? Young people, especially, because young people are into sports, the track and all of these sorts of things. And we would have spoken about developing a sports festival where you can highlight the best of your best when it comes to cricket, football, basketball, swimming, or even drag racing. So we have, like, you know, a 2-week sports festival where you can come to Nevis and you experience the best of the best from our athletes. And just imagine how the economy can benefit from something like that. So these are what we call like low hanging fruits. And one of the things that I would say, you know, I noticed that this current government, every time they sneeze, they want to go and get a loan, right? And the debt is sky high. So many grant opportunities are out there that once you organize the civil service in a way that we're looking at our sustainable development goals, we're looking at building climate resilience, we're looking at enhancing our creative economy, then people would come to work understanding how they are contributing to nation building. Because the grants are out there that we can write for. You put a program, and I believe in community by community. I don't believe that you have to, you know, go for these large programs that you have to go and get loans and then you have to pay the interest and you don't have the follow through. I mean, look at the work that you were doing with the fruit orchard, the Bankie. All of that work, and what is the status right now, right? People are not seeing the connection between what they do and how it fits in to building the economy of Nevis. And these are the things that we have to be able to get people to recognize, so that if you have to come in to your workplace and your job is to identify grant opportunities, we have to know that, okay, this is how we're going to fund Culture Armor this year. This is how we're going to pay our vendors. You know, there's a Cultural Development Foundation that is eligible to write for and receive grants to develop our creative economy. We see it being done in St. Kitts. And why are we still lagging behind? And so these are the things that we would need to get in. And from the beginning, we know some of the grant sources, start have people working in that area. We know the aspects that we want to do with regards to the blue economy, the agricultural sector, our sporting facilities. How much have we heard about work to be done to the El Camino Village Park? What has been done? You know? And so we just keep hearing talk after talk after talk. And when they take action and they start something, they cannot finish it because they're not focused. And for whatever reason, their focus is not on helping people. If their focus was really on helping and providing opportunities for the people, the Premier wouldn't have today to be talking about the SSD because students are coming out of college. The students are going to come out of college or sixth form, and the only opportunity is limited to what he is thinking about doing. What about food security? What about housing security? These same people
Can
that
you hear me?
you want to. Yes, I can hear you now.
Yeah, it seems like I'm getting sometimes you seem like you guys can't hear me at times. That's why I have to sorry about the exit out or coming back in. I know you interject and mention something about El Camino will it and the park and so on any work get it done on it. But I went to an event last night at town hall and I see cricket field and all kind of thing inside there. So we say cricket field. I just want to interject that. But no, you've been going from since the start of your little break to simmer down and then we'll get back to you. But so yeah, so I want to get in some of the questions that people been texting and stuff like that. So at least we get and then we can come back. Well, Janice take a little break, you know what I mean? And then we come up with the questions. And Carlos can start calling in after Yahsonn finish up with the questions and then we'll continue with the reason. So we're gonna start accepting call after Yahsonn read up the question while Janice take a break. Okay, so the telephone numbers is across the bottom of the screen. So either call and we continue the messages. And as I said, we continue the conversation while Yahsonn give Janice a break.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, well, we're gonna switch over to the Facebook page, and we've got Carl Paris saying, please let us say the name of Haiti and Dominican Republic, who are also experiencing the impact of Hurricane Melissa as well. So yes, we not only Jamaica, we want. Well, I did say that as well. All of the other Caribbean islands who may be affected, but you wanted to make sure that we specifically highlight Haiti and Dominican Republic. And yes, our brothers and sisters in Dominican Republic and our brothers and sisters in Haiti. Prayers are with you at this time as well. Delicious Nichols Brown says, good night, my area rep. Greetings, Bankie and Yahsonn. Adele McClendon says, good evening, everyone. Adele says, please export the mangoes to the US. Better than the ones sold out here. Steve Mills says, good night, Honorable Janice Daniel-Hodge. And good night, Bankie and Yahsonn. Adele says, so refreshing hearing from someone who clearly knows. She says again, that's how you know they're just adding to the design. Okay, we move over to the YouTube platform, and over here we've got Just G 1980 says, good evening, folks. Says, good evening, Honorable Dr. Hodge. We got baby KJB saying blessings, Miss Hodge. Ellie to T says Mark Brantley must go. No question about that. Iona says good night all. Barbie Jones says, how did the fallout with Cleon Stapleton hurt the party? Did it weaken the opposition in the Nevis Assembly and thus making it difficult for the opposition to hold the government's feet to the fire? He also asks, he's also saying, as women, why weren't you guys able to work out the differences and any chance of reconciliation? We got Troy Sadia saying, peace and blessings to all brothers and sisters. Empress Janice, blessed. Burby Jones says, last night consultation about the Destiny project. Were you satisfied with the turnout and what do you take from that outburst from the crowd shouting, no, 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 to the SSZ? Any advice to the Premier? Okay, so he was asking for questions for the guests, but I was telling him that we were going to take the questions after the first hour. We were going to give Janice an opportunity to respond to as many questions and express herself as much as possible in the first hour, and then we move on to questions and comments, and also allow folks to call in on the program. You can call in. The numbers are sliding across the screen: 1-869-662-7196 or 869-665-8459. Those are the numbers to call in if you wish to get a question or a comment, or to just give some positive greetings to Dr. Janice Daniel-Hodge. Someone here, that's Kedan5759, says you can monetize nature and reap the rewards accordingly. Think of Fiji Waters and the branding behind that. Nevis spring water is a luxury product that just needs more exposure. So, I guess he's looking at different ways of stimulating the economy and taking it from a different perspective. Kedan5759 also says Nevis is abundant in resources, just needs better management. Sandra Book says, good night, everyone. Wow. Ace Zan says, they really sound good, but Nevis need much more than she's saying. Money don't grow on trees. Nevis have to even know they can stand alone, even from sinking. Lynette Farrell says, this is my visionary leader. Bobby Jones says, who and Nevis will push to make Will it a national hero? Will NRP ensure that? Just G 1980 says, this is good dialogue with people can comment and give their ideas. A good listener and consider everyone's contribution. A good listener and considers everyone's contribution. We had another comment up here. I missed that one. I missed a couple of comments, but okay, I said I can't wait for Dr. Janice Daniel-Hodge to be premier so that the heavy burden can be lifted off Nevis and Nevision. So those are the comments, and Janice, we gave you an opportunity to take a little break because actually, we don't have commercial breaks here. We just, we go at it, and we sometimes have a very active comment section, and we know definitely that you're gonna get some more questions and some more calls and so on as the program continues. I recognize Bankie began to get into some of the major topics. So let me first, before Bankie get back in, ask what's your general view on the SSD Act recently passed by the government? Some argue it can attract investment and create jobs. Others worry about land ownership and sovereignty. Where do you stand on on Act and SSD and a whole?
Well, the SSC, I am not in favor of it as presented, and I must say we hear a lot about the projects, right? But when you look at some of the provisions that the SSC Act has, you must question, for example, why would people within the zone need to be exempt from our local laws, right? And that is actually in the legislation where it speaks about applicability of enactments in the special sustainability zone. So if you are having a zone, and the Premier tries to compare it to the Four Seasons Resorts, the Four Seasons Resorts development is not exempt from the laws of St. Kitts and Nevis. They must comply with the laws. And so they try to speak about what they want people to hear and they leave out the rest. Now, I think it was the day after the legislation was passed. One of my major concerns had to do with the fact that the Constitution gives Nevis, the Nevis Island Administration, exclusive rights over our land matters. And the Special Sustainability Zones Authorization Act actually has removed those powers, because to the extent that all development agreements must be signed by the Prime Minister before they can be effective, tells you that if Nevis has an SSC, and like I said, some of these issues, some of these conditions in the SSC really have no place if it weren't to facilitate the enclave or the state within a state, as we have been hearing, right? But when it is a situation, and I just say, the Premier feels that he would probably always be the Premier and the Prime Minister would always be the Prime Minister, because the legislation says that if the zone is in Nevis, right? Let me just switch it. It says the Prime Minister shall consult with the NIA before entering into development agreements, right? It also says no development agreement shall be entered into without the prior approval of the Nevis Island Administration. So the NIA approves and says, yes, this is the development agreement that we want, and then you send it over to the Prime Minister for him to sign. Well, what happens if Nevis actually has a sustainable zone project, and the Prime Minister in St. Kitts decides that he is not going to sign this development agreement? There's nothing in the act that says once Nevis approves, the Prime Minister shall approve. All right? All it says is that the Prime Minister shall consult before entering into development agreements. You shall consult. What does that mean? Right? It also says that no development agreements shall be entered into without the prior approval of the NIA. So the NIA must approve before the Prime Minister can sign. But what if the Prime Minister does not want to sign? We heard the Premier speak about a letter that he needed from the former Prime Minister to advance geothermal. We know he made that up, because we never heard about that letter until it became convenient for him to speak about the letter. But you just came out of a situation where you said you could not advance geothermal because you were waiting on a letter from the Prime Minister. And you're now going to second this agreement, which says you must now send your agreement over to the Prime Minister for him to sign, and no guarantee that he must sign it. So I have an issue with the fact that for any sustainable zone project, the Prime Minister must sign. Heretofore, we have been developing our lands in Nevis under our physical development ordinance, and nothing needed to go to St. Kitts for signature. why a sustainable zone project now must go to St. Kitts. They have argued that there are certain federal provisions that the NIA cannot speak to, and so the federal government must approve it. Well, what are these provisions? What are these provisions that the federal government must sign and the NIA cannot have the final say? Because we have never had a project like what is being proposed, a state within a state. And that is why it must go down to St. Kitts. But I remember my father used to say, you're too smart for your own good. And the premier may feel that he's creating some distance between himself and his wife by saying that the prime minister is the one who passed the legislation and the prime minister is the one that has to sign the agreement. But how does that help the people of Nevis or advance Nevis's cause when he himself has indicated how much challenge he has had trying to get documents signed from St. Kitts? So for them to be in the zone, to be exempt from the laws of St. Kitts and Nevis, we don't know which laws yet. And for them to be able to create their own zone laws. Bankie, I heard you say that you saw a rendering and it had cricket field and stuff like that. Well, we saw a rendering of the hospital. We saw a rendering of the poultry processing facilities. It's not difficult to generate a rendering to suit the purpose. The proof is in the pudding to actually get it done. And so this is why we are saying the Premier cannot tell you when he received the proposal. The Premier is operating as if the SSC legislation, and it does, puts the power in the hands of the Nevis Island administration, in the hands of the cabinet. And so even before he's able to establish an oversight body, he accepted an application. He accepted the application because the SSC states that the application is to be received by them. It does not make any reference to the Department of Physical Planning, who is the body responsible for reviewing and assessing our development proposals here on Nevis. So now this SSC legislation has taken the power for the development of Nevis from the planning department and put it in the hands of the Premier, for him to review, for him to assess, and then to say to the Prime Minister, we approve this project. Now tell me, when have you ever seen a proposal that the Premier is supposed to approve and he is the one out there advocating for the project? The developers are the ones who will come in and present their project, try to get the buy-in of the public, and submit their proposal to the Premier for him to then say, yes, you had consultations, yes, these people are okay. But not for you to be the one to approve the project. And you're going around talking to the chamber, and you tell chamber what you think they want to hear. You go around and you speak to the Evangelical Association, and you tell them what you think they want to hear. How do we know that he's giving the same information in all of these different meetings? That is not the way that we deal with development projects here on Nevis. And so I'm very disappointed that the legislation, the SSZ, puts the power in the hands of the Premier. It gives the Premier the authority to set up an independent oversight body. Now, the Premier is to receive the application and review it. He's supposed to set up the independent oversight body. He's supposed to make the recommendation to the Prime Minister. And then he's supposed to table the bill in the Assembly. Every step of the way, the Premier is in control. So how do we expect to be upholding? You know, we are upholding democratic principles because people can say what they want. But it means nothing based on what the SSC legislation allows. And the SSC legislation, I'm going to read another part here where it comes to ratification. Because people think that the legislation would be approved in the NIA before it goes to St. Kitts. But it says that a development agreement containing certain provisions reference shall be ratified by and contained in a law passed by the National Assembly. And if the area is within the island of Nevis, also by the Nevis Island Assembly. What does that tell you? The Prime Minister is the one to have the ultimate sign off on the development agreement. And then it must be passed by law in the National Assembly. And so whatever laws, whatever federal laws are applicable to Nevis that would not be applicable to the zone, it must be passed in the National Assembly. Because Nevis in the NIA, we can only deal with our ordinances. We cannot tell you that certain federal laws would not apply in the zone. And that is why it goes to the federal government, to the National Assembly, and then if the area is within the island of Nevis, also by the Nevis Island Assembly. So I
Yahsonn,
think we
one of the things I wanted to when we're on the zone and the project, what I've realized also, 'cause I love to pay attention to things. You know how I operate. I love to sit, observe, and pay attention. And well, the 15 minutes of playing the video, that wasn't really necessary. 'Cause a lot of time I've wasted in that and going over the bios and stuff like that. But what you ain't find on the website is the area that they have some different clips. I'm not sure if it's there now, but all these things. Just we went to verify if the water was hot with the young man that calling on this show to just prove that the water is at cap. I mean, not putting hot water out there, but on the same and one of the layouts on the map, he have all the hot springs them on the layout. So which means some local person with all the guts been taking around these people for years out upon years and mapping out all these areas. So we here looking like an idiot, don't know what going on the island. But these people who are from here, who class themselves as citizens, they have the passport, we the native, have a clue. And them no case it's in all these hot springs and all these guts and all this trapping of water and all this different stuff. I ain't convinced. Where you get all them water they from? Where all them water they gonna come from? Them got them now run like that. Them got runs one in a blue moon. Them got don't run. Them other got the first got the run. Yeah, but the other got over there where they got to. They got don't run like that, Virgin. They wanna do one have got serious rainfall for them got the to run. You know what I'm saying? So how you gonna chop them water there? What kind of engineering you gonna go a dam you gonna build and send all them water to all them acreage of land like a lake? Somebody fool somebody. But my thing is, Janice, the Division Public already gave up over 1,600 acres of land. For in my eyes, they don't win because the land of them won. So whether they build a project they are not, Division don't lose 60 square mile of land. Just to add to Anbas, just to add to your phone, just to add what Gaskell have, the year with them have, all these we got to put something in place where the natives is the only person that comes acres of land, not those who just come whether by marriage are here for X amount of time, get a passport by money or whatever, and have equal rights. The natives are not equal to those who come. I can go other places, Morocco, Curacao, and a lot of other places within the Caribbean, and whether they're or not, the land have to be the native name. We're not protecting ourselves. We have lost ourselves because this project is a project as far as I see, just like the prison project. You know, this is selling of passport. Okay, because why is not a cap? Is this? I've been saying all the time, this 7 to 10,000 people could be 30,000 people, could be 100,000 people. It's any amount of people. And the young man I got a big up Bingie son. Don't remember his name, but you know it is. Javel, big up yourself. Because this I've been saying this thing over and over. Why there is not a cap and the amount of people. So what? Yes, I mean, the film is saying for the last over the years, Bermuda is having over 22 square miles, half the size of Nevis, and having over 65,000 people. So what? Who cares? I don't care what Bermuda have. Who cares? Nevis is niche, my virgin. You know what I'm saying? Nevis is niche. You see, what's gonna happen down this road? And Premier knows that. So that's what he's saying. Once you're in the zone, you can come out the zone to buy the land outside the zone because of the cost of real estate. Yes, and don't everybody hear me saying soon the people of Nevis can't buy land, not even 2,000 square feet or 1,000 square feet. I have people coming from St. Martin investing here and telling me they're going from St. Martin, the castle land in St. Martin, 1,000 square foot of land, hundreds of thousands of dollars, my virgin. Same thing in St. Bart's. These people, then guys creating it to be a high-end place and a playground for the billionaires. And we gonna be those who just gonna entertain them and dance and charade, and if you get some little work here and there, and that is fine for them. The local credit code can't expand, you know, and if I'm credit code, if I'm tongue, government road can't expand. And I watching this around me, you know, I go up playing the Pasha, I fly kite, and then not near Pasha no more. It's pure development and houses and roads. Just up can't expand. I be around just up the same way. In a cotton bars got the same way. They can't expand. These small villages is consumed by large investors, by our own people. Are we the problem, you know? Me not blame no white man and no Indian man, and me not blame nobody. We may blame. So me as far as we no land no help, because we who are still out with people just for some grain or silver or salt or whatever you want, or pepper, I don't know. But something wrong with us. When I sit there in this town hall meeting last week, when I sit there, and all I see is Rwanda, the Hutsi and the Tutsi, ready to go at war. You understand? Divided because of green, blue, red colors. Ready to go at war. People emotional. People Christians, and those who don't support the Christian are mumble, and those it's supposed to be like that. It's not supposed to be like that. When you have these large amounts that's been selling, and these large in 10 years time, 5 years time, you have, okay, if you're gonna do a project like that, let's say you must build the workforce people them to live in, you know, the workforce, you're bringing a workforce, you must have to build a zone for the workforce them to sleep, and they must eat. So right then the food import bill gonna increase, and then before you start building, you must bring in a human force, you know, to do the work, you know. So where they're gonna sleep, where they're going to sleep, where what they're going to use, you must be a mini area bridging. That's rule number one. When you set up shop, you must have a place for the people to sleep and eat and all this different stuff. And you must have food for them. So where them they going to come from? Okay? So how the Minister of Agriculture not think about them things there? Let's say you build this zone, what will happen afterwards? Where the food going to come from? Where all them food are gonna go? So that's when the food import bill go up higher and higher and higher and higher. Then, so this food, so this 2025, 2030 is not serious. Is not nothing serious. You see, it is not serious. So my thing is, do you know how much the project gonna cost, Miss Hodge? Do you know how much the project gonna cost?
Nobody I don't know how much the project is going to cost. I think I saw figures somewhere where it was supposed to be built out over 10 years. And there was a figure mentioned. I can't recall the figure right now.
Okay, some of those figures the car they're talking about on the screen, because the same young man asked, well, and someone asked a question about when it comes to the healthcare and why the $50 million, why is only $50 million? That was funny to me, because when I hear the minister Eric Evelyn say, well, you think we should negotiate for more? We say, okay, so them negotiate these prices then. I was saying, is the people who are doing the building, so they'll give them 50, not knowing is these members of cabinet negotiate these prices, and this 5% goes to the, and them negotiate it, and then ask me about these things, you see? So that's what they give themselves. I was saying all the time was the people them so they're gonna give them these things, not knowing it's them ask for these things.
Well, they're trying to make the project seem, acceptable to people, right? But the problem that they have is that the based on the scale of the project, based on what they say they're going to do it, there is no way that they can be. It's almost like a bribe. They're the ones who are supposed to be approving the project. And then the developers are negotiating with them how much we're going to give you, right? For certain things. So if they say, well, listen, we need $100 million for the hospital, or else we can't sign the development agreement. It should not be that way. And just to go back to the legislation, that does not require the ESIA upfront, because if we had any appreciation and value the natural resources, right, then there would have been an ESIA completed to assess exactly what is in the area. Because, they are agreeing to certain prices, but they don't know the value of what is over there. And so, 50 million, maybe it can be 100 million. But the focus of this SSE is on the economics of it. And you will see that they had some figures. That is, that they got it from Oxford, I think they said it was. The same way that they could have provided those numbers for the economics of it, they should have been able to provide an assessment of the environmental and social and how the project would impact those areas, right? So the challenge that we have now, and based on what the Premier would have said, he was elected to lead, and he's leading the way that he sees fit, regardless of what anybody has to say about the development. And so I have taken my time, Bankie, to separate my concerns regarding the legislation and the development projects, right? And neither one of them were done in a transparent way. The legislation was not done in a transparent way, and the project was not done in a transparent way, because for years people were being approached to sell lands and they had no idea what was being planned. And so can you imagine the wife of the Premier, who people figure in good faith, she's a real estate agent and she's acting on behalf of a client, and she has come and is interested in buying the property. They were buying property long before the legislation was passed, and people were deceived into selling their property, because I'm certain there's some
But okay,
people.
the premier mentioned that your family sold land and stuff like that, and you're speaking on the same project about sales of land. What did that came about? Did you know about the project, about this Destiny project and all this stuff going on? How did this land came about? I know you speak about it, that your dad left in a will and stuff like that. So did you guys know about this Destiny project?
Of course, we did not know about the Destiny project. When we were approached in 2024, there was no SSD legislation, no Destiny project, and we were asked. We had a legal obligation to sell the land based on what my father placed in the will, and so it could very well be that they went around and targeted people who they know had legal obligations to sell. Because, if you have a legal obligation and you don't sell, you can end up in some legal challenges, right? So we were approached, the executives of my father's estate were approached back in 2024. And we thought it was a good faith, deal. And we accepted the arrangement. What we received, like most other people, was the deposit. The land has not been sold. The land is still in my father's name, in the name of the estate.
No. You got to back up the one day. I understand the one day. So me just mentioned is 1,600 acres being sold, so which means me wrong then. So the land, so me understand that deposit. Well, how this year work? Me understand. Me understand the one. You explain the one, yeah.
There is an agreement.
Explain.
There is an agreement to sell, right? So in the real estate world, somebody would come, they have an interest in buying your property. But, sometimes, if it's a a small transaction. Maybe they need to go to the bank and come back. So they would sign an agreement and make a deposit, right? That is what happened in the case of my father's estate. An agreement was signed and a deposit was made. The land had not been
Okay.
sold.
So, because I heard someone mention last night that he was offered 1%. So, me not understand that again. So, what are they going to do with the land? Sell your land and then pay you for your land? Me trying to me brain don't work like that. Me not understand this. So, how these people supposed to be all these billionaires and all this crypto whatever this and not come and give you peace and have a good. Me not understand that. So, how this what you call it again? The reality so wise and I get so much land for all these over 1,600 acres. Well, she's smart, boy. The female have a right to say she got a master's in in we call it there real estate for over 20 years because she really smart. I must say that kudos because me could not do that because you not give me higher land. So the one that works so much people give over 1,600 acres of land just for deposit. Explain,
Well,
explain because it's fascinating to me. Explain to me.
I'm sure they have different arrangements. I'm sure they have different arrangements with different people, right? So in our instance and in a lot of other instances as well, the approach was made and the agreement was accepted and signed, a deposit made. But when you look at the SSC arrangement, the SSC legislation, it says in order to get the zone, they need to either own the land or have what we call a purchase sale agreement, or have an agreement where you have signed with somebody willing to sell the land. So they may have purchase sale agreements, but it doesn't mean that they actually own all of the land.
So
and that is
when someone going around buying all these land, they don't say, well, we have an intention to build. They just have people that sell land and no question asked to the person buying the land. So what are you going to do? Some whatever, raise some sheep and agriculture. Nothing is said to the people you're seeking the land from.
Some questions will be asked.
Yes.
Some question will be asked. It's a development project, but no details because, like I said, from when the land
no details. I got you. Right. No details. I got you.
When the land were being purchased, there was no talk of destiny. There was no talk of the SSC, right? Because that came about in 2025, just in August of 2025. So imagine that land were being purchased from 2024, 2023, even, right? And people just in good faith who say, okay, this is an arrangement to buy the property. Persons, I can tell you, I am certain, if this SSD legislation was in place when the approach was made to buy the property, a lot more questions would have been asked, and the outcome may have been different.
So let me go back there again. Because the premier put it when let me put it in a one and say what the man no say. But the premier put it you benefited that you all sell over 25 acre, whatever allotted, and you get your cut or whatever it is. Well, the general public I figure, I get paid in full. Now you're telling me the land still in your father's name and all this estate or whatever. Your son says so kind of kindergarten kind of thing. I analyze the one, yeah. Understand the one, yeah.
Bankie, the land has not been sold. It's still in the name of my father's estate. I did not pocket no millions of dollars. I have not pocketed 1 cent. I have not pocketed 1 cent. But the premier will be able to tell the judge about that.
Hold 1 second, right? Because I think this is a very touchy topic because it is something that is being utilized a lot and being spoken about a lot from the other side, from the premier, and a lot of people, I think, do have their own perspective, especially when you do hear from people in leadership and people who you consider to be credible people make such statements. These things.
Yes, and when you finish, you just gain some comments when you finish. Go ahead. Just wanted to gain that. Go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. So I think this thing should be very much clear. I think I would really love, since you're here, so that we can really clear the air on this. Okay. So here is a bit of my question. I know in your case that the land is an estate, and you are, well, maybe the executor or one of the executors of the estate, and it is a part of what you're saying, a part of the will and testimony of your late dad, that the land must be sold. Okay, so in that case, it is something that must be done, and you said that there's an agreement. The question I wanted to ask, in since the land are not necessarily being sold at this point, based on the agreement, is there any way that for those who may have made arrangements can back out on those arrangements and say, well, okay, now that we know what is going on, we don't want to sell these lands anymore? Is there that legal option?
That's possibly a legal option where we would have to get a lawyer involved. And so that is something that I did think about in terms of what would be required. But without getting into all of the details, while my father's will would
Oh,
have said that the land.
sorry, hold 1 second. In that question, I didn't really expect you to be using your personal example, because remember I did say, based on your specific scenario, you're an executor for, so I was more looking at the possibility of others who might not necessarily be in your situation, but were approached and are in that position where they might have been given an arrangement to maybe pay a percentage or something like that, but the land is still in the end. So not necessarily you personally.
Yes, and so the terms of the agreement that was signed, you would have to look at the terms of the agreement. Usually, you would have something that says if either party breaks the agreement, what the consequences would be, or something like that. Generally, if the buyer is not able to follow through and purchase, then the seller would retain the deposit that was made, or a portion of the deposit that was made. So each of the agreements, I'm not certain that all of them are, from the same template. So each agreement would have to be looked at to determine if you wanted to exit that agreement, what would be involved.
Yahsonn, let me take this call, Yahsonn. Caller, good evening. Hello? Caller? Hello? Hello? No, can't hear you. You're going to call back. I can't hear you. Go ahead, Yahsonn.
Okay. Yes. So that is something that I think, yes, Janice, that we need to clarify, because it is something that is on the ear a lot. So in your case, you said that it was a part of the estate and it had to be sold. And based on what you said now, the land technically, in reality, is not sold. You have an arrangement for it to be sold, and upon that sale or whatever arrangement, whenever that is, then is when you're gonna be given that money, or you and the other executors will be able to do whatever.
Right.
Walk us through that arrangement. You don't have to give us the full details, but because this is quite interesting. We have been hearing this, and it is good to hear from you, who is one of the persons who might have a different arrangement to what others may have, but at least have an arrangement either way. Because we would have heard in the town hall meeting last night, like Bankie mentioned, someone spoke to a 1% that they were given and pending the rest. So, yes, help us to better understand.
Yeah, so I'm looking for one of the conditions precedent for the development agreement. This is what it says. The zone developer shall provide evidence of ownership or lease of, or of agreement to purchase or lease the real property comprising the area as of the time of entering the development agreement. So, if they have a lease or if they have an agreement to purchase, which in our case, that is what they have an agreement to purchase, or if they outright own the property. So it doesn't mean that they actually own all of the property up to that point. If they have a purchase sale agreement, then that is what would be required to enter the development agreement. And then once they get the development agreement, whether or not they are leasing, because and I suspect they have lease because part of the project, you notice that there was a marina and they would need to lease the seabed for that area. So it is not outright ownership of all of the area. That is what they would need to have to enter into the agreement. But I have to come back, Bankie, because if I tell you how I felt when I listened to the premier on the radio saying that I would have sold my lands and pocketed millions of dollars. And the fact of the matter is, he knows that that is not the case. And that just goes to show you how dishonest he is.
Let me get this
Because
call in.
yes.
Caller, good evening. Call in. You sound kind of low. Call the next number up and I can't hear you. You're not coming through clearly. I don't know what's going on with your reception, but you're not coming through clearly.
All right. Okay, thanks.
I'm not sure with this caller phone, Yahsonn. But yeah, but go ahead, Janice.
Yeah, so I'm saying one of the issues that we're looking at is the dishonesty of the premier in so many different ways regarding the development. And so you don't know what to believe and what not to believe. Because, a couple of people called me asking me about the receipts that he said he had. And I knew that there's no way that he could have receipts. But the length to which he would go to I can't even say to make a point, right? It is very disheartening, and that is why people are confused, because he will say something that is
Let me
totally
get this call in, Janice. Let me get this caller in. Hold the thoughts. Caller, good evening. Hello? Hello? I know my phone seems to be acting up. Can't hear nothing.
Okay, well, I have a caller here, so
I think
hold on.
I
Yes.
think I can hear you now.
Yeah, go ahead, caller.
Yes, good evening. Gentlemen, great show. Dr. Daniel-Hodge spoke about the letter about the lands, that's in the agreement, that her family's estate. Now, I think after that, after the Premier accused Dr. Daniel-Hodge of pocketing millions, she would have mentioned about a letter that she wrote to the Premier after, not the legal document, but I believe it's important to talk about that letter, the content of that letter that you sent to the Premier, Honorable Hodge. I'm not sure you did mention it in a social media post that you wrote to the Premier asking about the lands after you found out. So I think it's very important the audience knows that.
Okay, that's it, caller?
I'm not. Yeah.
Yes.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. I don't have that letter at hand, and I really can't recall specifically, but I know I did ask some questions about the lands over there. And, like I said, because of the dishonesty, I would have had to engage legal representation. So that's the matter that we're looking at.
But this is quite interesting, and this is bringing some things into sharp focus and into light as I listen to what you would have just explained. You are saying that you in your case and in your scenario, you were approached back in 2024. Do you have an idea of how early in 2024? Are we talking about like late 2024 or early 24? Could you recall? Do you have an idea? I'm just trying
No,
to.
it was about mid 2024, somewhere around July, something like that. And it was actually, like I said, there were two executors, myself and my brother. And he was the one who was actually approached. And then he advised me that, someone was interested in acquiring the property. So that was back in around July of 2024 that happened. And then, then you started to hear some rumors about the aggressive nature in which people were being asked to sell their lands. And, people are wondering, "Well, what's going on? Why is this, like that?" And it wasn't until,
Okay.
well,
Okay.
there was, yeah.
Let's say this, right?
Mhm.
They don't want they don't want an NK, they don't want a zone again. They just want developer, they just want to do development. Then what? You just change the concept from a zone, just take the zone out of it, and just say just a development, just like a 4 season, whatever expansion. Then what? Since they're getting this pushback, then they could just change and say, you know what? What about the zone thing? But you still get all the concession, all the this, all the that, and whatever, and duty free concession. It's just that you see what I mean? But the same
Yeah, but
security, everything.
the issue is the type of development that the Premier is bringing to the people of Nevis. It's not
Yeah,
that
that's what
we
I'm
are
saying. But
against
Wait,
development.
yeah, but
hold on a second, Banky.
yeah, go ahead.
And
Yes.
and it's 1 second before responding. We got a caller on the line, so let's see if we can facilitate the caller. Good evening, caller.
Good evening. Good evening to everyone. Janice Hodge.
Even
I have one question. Does the NRP have any manifesto? And if so, where can we pick it up?
no, the NRP does not have a manifesto at this time for the upcoming election. We're not expecting an election for until 2027. If it comes before, we would make the necessary arrangements. But we do not have a manifesto at this time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you very much, caller. Yes, Banky, you could go ahead, and Janice, you can continue responding to Banky's question if you remember the question from the train of thought. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so Banky was asking if the project changes, right? If the project changes and comes in under our existing laws and regulations, as all other projects do, then that's a different, concept. What we're looking at here is a totally new approach to development on Nevis. The scale of the project is significantly more than anything we have seen before. Whether or not that would be a viable type of project, all of those things would have to be looked into. But as is, and trying to get 2,400 acres, I mean, that's a lot of land when we're speaking about, land scarcity. We're only 36 square miles. And as much as people speak about having, all the eggs in the CBI basket, this is one developer. And so it seems like we're getting ready to move from all of the eggs in the CBI basket to all of the eggs in the SSG basket, because everything that the Premier has to do seems to be hinged on what happens with this SSZ development, the hospital, the port, scholarships, and so, job opportunities. Everything is hinged on this SSZ. It's still a one developer. What are the guarantees? Like I said, in a typical development agreement, the developer would have to put up a bond, or it's typical that a developer will put up a bond so that if they're not able to complete the project, the government is able to complete it in some way. In this instance, the legislation is saying that the developer or the NIA could be, could have to pay penalties, right? And so why would the government want to, if you are providing or facilitating the development, why would you be in a position now where you may have to be breach of the development agreement and then have to pay for penalties? So these sorts of things in the agreement are not standard, and it exposes the government to, you know, significant more risk than you would want to accept. If you're developing under the physical planning development ordinance, it's a totally different type of project, and so you would have different requirements and different expectations.
What is the status? I know you have a case against the premier for defamation. Is that ongoing? What is the status on that?
It's ongoing. It's ongoing.
Okay. Okay. So what is the future for Nevis under leadership of yours? What would you like to see Nevis, the future of Nevis when it comes to development, housing? Because right now housing is a big issue, and there's so much people who need house young people, and you can't even go to London housing no more where you can't get, and plus the cost of the houses, them are so expensive now, and most people cannot go to the bank and get a loan. But let me see if I get in this call, and then I can answer the question. Carla, good evening. Can't hear what's going on with your phone. Call number, please, because I'm not getting you this evening. Yeah. You get the question?
Yes. So what we have to look at, and like I said, once you recognize that your responsibility is to make lives better for the people that you're serving. I know under NRP government, we try to help people with housing. What we're seeing here now is where, everybody has to get a cut. And so one of the things that we would have to go back to doing is, when you're looking at housing and a housing development, once you can buy your material in bulk, you plan, you want to put down however many houses, you do your different quantity survey and you buy your material in bulk so that you can pass on those savings to the homeowner. What we're seeing now is where you have a subcontractor for the plumbing material, a subcontractor for the electrical material. And so everybody is involved, all of these different middlemen, the cost is going to go on to the homeowner. And we've seen certain policies which, if you, for example, is an area called University Heights, where if you have a university degree, in order to get people back home, you will provide land at an attractive price. Well, there are persons on the other end who are working, they're struggling, they would like to get their own home as well. So, but no incentives are put in place for those persons. So we have to be careful in terms of how we would want to develop Nevis. We talk about being fair and being inclusive and giving people opportunities. We would have to be able to ensure that persons have the type of opportunities that they would need to acquire their homes. Another concern that we have regarding the housing is that, the law requires that you have water storage equipment, whether it's a cistern or something like that. The government is building houses and not providing assistance, they say, in an attempt to keep the costs down. But when they don't plan the houses properly, when they don't purchase the material in bulk, the costs must rise. And these are things that we have already identified that we cannot, continue in that way. I can recall when Prime Minister of St. Lucia got into government, one of the first things he did was to get funding for affordable homes through the Sustainable Development Grants Program. because if the Sustainable Development Goal speaks about, alleviating poverty and improving the standards of living, etc., it's just understanding what you're doing and how you go about doing it. I find that this current government, they focus too much on loans, and they don't take the time to go out and get grant funding to get things done, or even concessionary loans that would be at a much lower cost. And so it's very simple to, call up the bank and you need a loan. But then the burden, we're the ones who have the burden to deal with it. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I want to touch a little bit on dialysis because I know when NAP was in power, there was some dialysis machine bought and was set at the hospital. And since many people, and then the Premier had spoke about going to Guyana with a contingent, and they're going to bring X amount of dialysis machine and all this different stuff. And even the same wing that has been added by the hospital, supposed to be having a dialysis unit and all that was supposed to be a part of this dynamic plan. And then you just recently had a young teacher, very young, have died because of renal failure, and those others who have passed over the years. What are the NRP plan when it comes to dialysis?
Well, I mean, that should be straightforward, and you missed out the fact that the Taiwanese government would have given $167,000 to provide dialysis equipment in Nevis. And there's no dialysis equipment and no account for the money that was given. Right? So these are the type of services, and like I say, when you think about others and you can share part with the struggles that they're going through, some of the things that can be done, it was done before, and we can do it again, right? Because we're not here to help ourselves, And I think one of the ways in which we can really make a difference is that the taxpayers' money must be used for the benefit of the taxpayers, not taxpayers' money being used to help help ministers help themselves. And that's one of the reasons you end up with no money in the treasury. You have to take loans, so the people lose on whichever way you flip it, the people are losing. And so we can't afford to do that.
Is there any reason why Nevis can have a community college similar to a branch of the CFBC where I guarantee if Nevis have a similar branch of CFBC, we'll have hundreds of Nevisian young people going part. It's just the traveling going across the ocean every day and stuff, and the transportation alone is a cost, and the minimum cost is enough. You see what I mean? When you're paying, instead of paying $20, $30, you're paying $50. It's still going to add up for a student. And even though they said, it's free, it's not free because the nursing program still got to pay these fees. So how is these things? Can it going to affect the division? The Nevis is not being looked at when it comes to crossing over the water, and that part is we got to come better than this. We got to have where Nevision itself have to have this infrastructure on the island itself, because is less people gonna go when many have been deprived of equal opportunities. So what are your plans when it comes to this kind of stuff? Education is key, and this is primary education.
Well, Bankie, we speak about our overarching goal is to capitalize on our natural resources, renewable energy,
Yes.
blue, etc. Right? Your education program should be aligned with your vision for the direction in which you want to take, the island. And so we're living in the age of technology. And we know people, you can stay at home and get your degree online, right? Now is not the time where you have to, have this big facility and you need to bring in all of these different people. Once you understand what your focus is, the programs that you want to be able to provide, we're talking about bringing in solar. Our people need to be able to be trained to install and to repair, solar equipment. So, with the age of technology, there's so much that we can do once you set out with a clear pathway as to how you're going to do it. So it's not so much that we have to go to sinkers. Like I said, one of the things that we understand that we have to do is to be able to be self-sufficient as much as possible. Some people take this in the wrong way, but hey, if you can help yourself, then anything else that you get would be, would be only additional gravy on the top. And so technology, definitely we put in place the type of college programs that we would need to contribute towards our building of Nevis.
Beautiful. Let me see if this call get in. Carla, good evening. Yes.
Am I on here?
Yeah, you're live. Can you speak up, please?
Okay. Good evening to you and Yahsonn, I think.
Yes.
And my representative from St. James's. I wanted
Good evening.
to add my vote to the debate. A couple of things.
Yes, but be brief, Carla. Be brief. Be brief, please. Because we done running over time already. So just be considerate, please.
Okay. I to the town hall meeting last night with intrigue, and I find it quite laughable. And from our representatives, and that. Number one, they skirted around a number of the very important questions that were asked, and I think some very great questions were asked. And it shows that they're out of their depth with respect to this proposal. With respect to the housing matter that one of the attendees asked about, I mean, Eric's response was they want to purchase land for housing or for our housing stock. Still, on one hand, you are willing to give up 2,400 acres of land or aggressively pursuing landowners to give up their land for foreigners. Well, what do you do with your citizens? And one of the functions of government is to provide lands and access to housing. We have to encourage. And then the other thing that I found that was laughable, you're getting your citizens to return home. Well, what if 3,000 Nevisians decide that they want to return home and they don't have lands? Where do you put them? So the whole thing is really laughable, I find. And it seems like every time they present feedback to the developers, they make some adjustment to the plan or to their proposal to make it palatable to the Nevisian public. Secondly, I also think that they need to make accommodations for Nevisians in the diaspora to participate in these town hall meetings, because we do have a stake in our country. We love country just as much as anyone who is at home. Thirdly, I really think that Nevisians need to start thinking about contemplating retaining lawyers to cancel whatever contracts they had with the developers in terms of their lands, because they were deceived. This was a deceptive arrangement, and they need to consider this. This is really a ridiculous project, and I don't find it's really going to move anywhere, and I think that is going to be tied up in the courthouse.
10 seconds. 10. All right, appreciate it. Okay. Yahsonn. Well, before Janice, before you continue, agriculture. How would you bring down the food import bill, which include fishing, agro-processing, crop production? What will be the NRP plan when it comes to sustainability? Because you've been using the word sustainability over and over. So when it comes to the food aspect of it, how will that be achieved?
Right. So, I mean, if you look at fishing, for example, like I said, the fishers do not have the necessary infrastructural support. When the fishers have to go over to St. Kitts to get fuel over there at a cheaper cost, it shouldn't be too difficult as a government to arrange to have fuel over here, especially for your fishers at a reduced cost. Because of course, the more it costs them to do the fishing, the more it's going to cost the consumers to purchase. the necessary modernization of the fleet that we need to have. Our fishers, they go out for a couple hours in the morning. You really don't have a whole lot of fishers who are committed to fishing on a full-time basis as a full-time employment, because the market is not as consistent as they would want it to be. When you actually have your your fisheries complex, your fishing processing going on, no matter when they go out, when they come back, they would be able to offload their fish. We talk
So when you
about
said that, right? So, but
mhm.
when you said that, it mean funding got to be involved because this, I mean, the larger so I mean you want to provide in with explain the part.
Yeah, and that's why I keep speaking about grant funding, because there is grant funding out there, for example, to help the fishers deal with sargassum, to help the fishers deal with with sargassum. You now have less days for fishing sometimes because you have to wait until that is gone. With the impacts of climate change, you have less fishing days because you have rough seas. The increase in temperature, you need to be able to have a good supply of ice to keep your fish fresh. So all of these are things that can be put into a proper grant application to support. You could call it modernization of the fishing sector. You can call it developing the blue economy. All of these are things that funding is out there available for once you put the proper proposal together. And like I say, you don't have to do it all at once. You could start one fish landing site at a time. Once you have a plan and you roll it out, you know exactly what you would need to do. So it's just having the focus and knowing what would need to be done. The processing, whether it's from you know plants, fruits, or even from fisheries, these are things, like I said, we don't need to be importing fish burgers and fish sticks and these things. We can make them here. We don't need to be importing, mango chunks. Even, so many people the restaurants use for making smoothies and all these sort of things. And they're all going to the supermarket and buy all these chunks. When we could actually employ people to process, you said there's a, freezer over there. It's just understanding where you begin and where you end, the end point that you want to get it. Keep in mind, capitalizing on our natural resources. We don't need to go out there and try to invest in any major, um, foreign aspect of it. We have the natural resources here. We put them to use. We put them to work for our benefit. And so that's how I would look at it.
Yahsonn, I know we are running over 2 hours now, and we really appreciate you taking the time to come out on the show. It's been kin. But if you have to leave, Yahsonn, you have any questions before we start this wrapping up? Can you get in any other additional questions first before we get into that stage? I think that would be the best thing to do.
Okay, so let me see if I can go through some of the comments that were here. Okay, so let's start from here. Patronizing, conveniently, scared of the truth. I'm not getting the warm and fuzzy feeling when I hear Dr. Hodge talking about she's not satisfied with the law as presented. Why can't she just say she's not satisfied with the law? I am not for, somebody says, I am not for repeal and replace. I am for repeal. Franklin says, Janice is just a lazy layback leader. Okay, anyway, let's not. Big Town and nobody heard one big town hall meeting. Janice, were you at the town hall meeting last night?
I was not. I was actually off island.
Okay.
I was able to look at it, and I must commend all those persons who went out and lend their voice to the concerns and to the process, really. So I was off island.
Okay. I'm happy to get you to answer that because I'm sure I saw some comments in there, somebody saying that you were not even there to, and so I'm glad you were able to verify that for us, okay, that you were not even on island last night. C. Gaskell says the Premier admitted at the town hall last night that the only reason we have this SSD legislation is because the developer required it. The Premier admitted at the town hall last night that the only reason we have this SSD legislation is because the developer required it. Interesting. I have to go back and listen to that discussion. Frank, okay, so we don't need to answer that because that was answered already. He was talking about she never come out and tell us about what land she sell, but that was, responded to already. Truth Bankie, the slideshow indicated the hot springs precisely where the one you videoed is. Someone says, I agree, Bankie, they knew the value of the lands. They knew the value the lands hold. Yes, Bankie, up to today, the Premier talking about high end. Everything will become expensive, and we, the local, will not be able to afford any land. That needs to be stopped along with this SSD. Pearl B. Jones says, great points, Bankie, about the lands. Don't change hands already. 1,700 acres to be exact, according to Eric Evelyn at the press conference this morning. Lands already changed hands, not coming back. C. Gaskell says if the deal is not signed, then closing is unlikely. AC Zon says, Bankie, do you know Nevis bigger than, I guess, okay, he came back and he said, he meant St. Martin. St. Martin is smaller than Nevis. This should not be allowed. It was a panel of cooks waiting for big payday from the SSD. LET says, I do not think, I'm not thinking wrong with the people. What's here? All blame goes to the leadership. What else we got going on here? It says, Bobby Jones, the Premier keeps saying Jensen is a citizen for 7 years, but from my recollection, the guy said he has been in Division for 10 years. Downplaying the timeline, how long he knows of the project. Bobby Jones again says, we heard Miss Daniel, so lands, okay, but that was responded to already. He says, we're there, you see there, where no one can convince me that there is no conflict of interest. There's too much insider information. If the land transactions are not totally completed, like she said, it's only a deposit. So does that mean the lands are not totally sold? And if not, can they be reversed? Well, that question was asked and we responded to that already. Nothing Mark says ever the truth, and he said that to cause mischief and confusion, and that's why Janice, okay, so, okay, all right. Anyway, if you are striving to be the leader of Nevis, you're not curious about the property's intended use. Let's just go down the line and see. But there's a lot of comments. There's a lot of comments here, and I don't think we'll be able to get through all of these. But I guess later on, Janice, as the show ends, you might be able to, go through and check the comments, and if there's need be for you to respond to any of the comments. But at the same time, we want to give thanks to all of you who participated and commented and are calling on the program. Also, Janice, based on what I'm seeing here and the feedback and everything so far, I am hoping that you're going to be giving us an opportunity to be back here with us in the not too distant future, because seemingly there was a lot of other questions that I would have had, and a lot of other things based on the SSZ and the development and, how the consultation and, waiting until after the So there are a number of things that, we still can go through, and I would hope that we will get a chance to discuss in the not too distant future. So we really want to welcome you back, and we really want to thank you for the opportunity to be here on the platform to speak on your life, give us an idea of your life story, and the journey from Janice the baby to Janice the politician, and some of the plans for NRP and so forth. And we're looking forward to continuing the discussion. So what we would do, Bankie, we would give Janice an opportunity to, give her closing remarks and to touch on any other issue or respond to any, other thing that you think is pertinent at this point. And then we really look to have you back here as soon as we possibly can.
Okay. Well, thank you. It was definitely a pleasure being here this evening. One of the things I would want to emphasize is that we are where we are today as an island, where we are being forced to have to grapple with the loss of sovereignty. We're forced to have to grapple with the loss of lands for development that was, came to us on a very deceptive means. And while the Premier today would want to make it seem that this project is the savior for Nevis, we must recognize that it really has been the incompetence of his party and his leadership why all of the projects that should have been implemented, should have been operational by now to provide some stimulus to the economy. We must recognize that this is really a last straw for the Premier, and it's unfortunate that this is what it has come to, where he is actually the spokesperson for this project. Unheard of, unheard of. Never have you had the leader of the country going around, trying to convince the people that this is the way to go. Like I said earlier, it's almost as if it's a bribe situation. We need to complete the hospital, so we must have this project.
Yes, on your mic pause.
Yeah. But Janice,
okay.
there's something, right, that you said earlier, and it hinted to this thing that I saw in the SSZ act or bill or legislation, right? When we were talking about your agreement with the realtor who would have purchased it. You spoke to, when I asked you the question about reversing the sale in the event that now you know what the situation is, if you can, you said that it is based on the arrangements in the contract, which speaks to if you break or don't do X or don't do Y, what the consequences are. I bring you back to that because in the act or proposed bill, I could recall that there's a part that speaks to the responsibilities of the parties involved in the agreement. And part of it spoke to the responsibility of both parties to have a buy-in from the people. So technically what he was saying, to me, how I interpreted it, is that the government, along with the developers, have a responsibility, so to speak, to get the buy-in from the people. So maybe that is why we are seeing the government so much out in front, even more than the developers, because we have not even really heard from the developers. But it is a part of the quote-unquote contractual expectations, so to speak, expectations of the agreement. That is how I got it. I don't know if you have interpreted it that way as well, but I just wanted to interject that because it came back to me as I listened to what you were saying.
Yeah, well, it's difficult because of the whole approach. Like I said, If it were that the development application came in the usual way to the Department of Physical Planning, and the department was allowed to continue its process like it normally would, that would be different. But there was so much deception from the beginning that people have lost confidence in the premier and what he's saying to them. So, like we say, all of these things that are happening now, all of these different consultations, etc., his posturing at those consultations is not one that is going to garner buy-in. You know, I mean, when people ask if you don't like the project, and he's going to say, "Well, I was elected and I will lead," you know, that is a dictatorship type approach. Because if even if you have a project that you want to move forward, then you encourage people to make their contributions, and you respond in a way where they feel respected, and that what they have to contribute would actually make a difference. But the posturing right now is, I'm doing this and the project is going to go forward, right? Somewhere I would have heard where he said if the legislation is repealed, that would be considered a breach on their behalf. Well, all of this should have been brought to the people before.
Well,
The people needed to know what was in the SSC legislation before they went to Parliament. And as I said, you had 6 people in the Parliament who spoke on behalf of the legislation in the federal Parliament. You had the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs on the government side. 3. In order for this legislation to pass, it required the other 3 from Nevis who were supposed to be going there to look out for the best interests of the people of Nevis. They actually went down there. The Premier, the Alexis Jeffers, and Eric Evelyn all spoke in favor of this act, which is taking the control of our land affairs from the Nevis Island administration and putting it in the hands of the Prime Minister. And so when we say that we're in this position now because of the incompetence and the lack of understanding of what it is to serve the people, that is why we're here now. This legislation should have never passed. And from my assessment, if the 3 ministers from the opposition benches from Nevis did not go down and support this legislation, we would not be here grappling with it today. Right? The Premier would be happy to say the Prime Minister is the one who tabled the bill. It was not going to pass. The Minister of Sustainable Development was not in the House of Assembly. The Attorney General was not in the House of Assembly when this bill was passed. All right? So it is clear that the Premier has an agenda. He has had an agenda for a very long time. He knew from when his wife was going around buying the property, they knew what the plan was. They knew what the plan was. And so when the people of Nevis say that they feel betrayed...
Let me ask this question while you're on this thing here. Under the integrity in public life legislation, right? Does the Premier have a duty to reveal that his wife was directly involved in the business? He may be called upon to weigh in anything like this. Did he have reason to put all this information to the integrity? How does this work? I ain't hear nobody really speaking upon this in a sense. How does this work?
Well, the Integrity in Public Life Commission, you would have to declare. You would have to declare your assets, and you would have to declare the assets of your spouse. With regard to the conflict of interest, and with regards to whether or not this was good governance and acting in a proper manner. The Integrity in Public Life Commission that we have in Nevis does not have the necessary teeth, so to speak, to investigate and assess these situations. The
So
matter
I'm
would
to the
have
one
to
in
be
St.
brought,
Kitts.
right, it would have to be brought to the Integrity in Public Life Commission in St. Kitts, which is something that is being looked at, and the correspondence being drafted as to whether or not this whole action does not constitute a conflict of interest. Here you have the wife working for the developer, and now you have the husband who is the one to approve the project for the developer. I mean, you can't get any closer than that. So both of them are working for the same developer, right? That is not good governance. That is not good governance. So these are matters, all of these are things that have to be looked into. There's so much we can do up to a certain point in time. I would mention here that, we would have written to the Attorney General regarding the constitutionality of this SSD legislation, considering that the Constitution gave Nevis the exclusive rights for land affairs. And now under this SSC, Nevis does not have exclusive rights. They're rights that sit with the Prime Minister. We have written, and no response has been provided with regards to that up to this point. We've also written to the Prime Minister with regards to the same issues and the need to repeal the legislation. We have not received a response yet either. So the IPL would be, next in the line with regards to what needs to be done. But let me say here tonight that there are two issues that we're looking at. One, the SSC bill being repealed or being struck down in the court of law. And for it to be repealed, it will require that the parliamentarians, the majority of parliamentarians would have to approve that it be repealed. For it to be struck down as unconstitutional, it would require the efforts of the legal fraternity to get involved and to file a case. And so while as a party we have been, doing some exploration and trying to see how this can be looked at, there's no such thing as a free lunch, and monies would be involved in terms of having this looked at. I'm still hoping that there will be some patriotic lawyers out there who have the necessary training, because as I understand, it's not just any lawyer to go in and file a case regarding the constitutionality of this legislation. You would need to have lawyers who are versed in constitutional law. And so I'm still hoping that based on what is entailed in this legislation and what it can lead to, you would notice that the Premier would be quick to say that you do not see the word sovereignty in the legislation, but you don't see the word, but all of these other exemptions and special laws and all of these things add up basically to the same thing. And so we really don't see how this is going to be beneficial to the people of Nevis. I heard the Premier trying to figure out how the people of Nevis would benefit outside of the money that they set for the hospital, etc. And if they're going to be having all of these tax breaks and having their own laws, etc. They talk about a percentage of their profits. Those profits would be derived from who would be selling the passports. There's so many questions. There's so many questions to be looked at. You suspect they will be selling the property, they will be developing and selling homes, to people over there. That's where the profits, some of the profits would be coming from. But this is really just a bit much that the people of Nevis have to be dealing with at this time, which if we had an effective functioning government over the last couple of years, I don't think this would have been such a critical situation where the Premier has it as if it is the be all and end all of what we're able to do to advance our economy here on Nevis.
Well, Janice, I this has been quite a lengthy wrap up. We're almost into the 3 hour because this issue and a number of issues are so pressing at this point. I mean, we have discussed the SSZ. I mean, it's a good thing we went through some of the other things earlier, but look at how we have just been on this topic for the past maybe say 30, 40 minutes, and we still haven't even touched the skim of the surface where this issue is concerned. So we definitely have to get you back here on the program with us to further these discussions and these different topics and look at these different things. We haven't even gotten a chance to look at some of the other issues that are happening regionally in terms of asking you in terms of what's going on in terms of the war and potential war and Venezuela and Trinidad and all of we are so tied up sometimes with our own national politics that sometimes we don't really get in with some of the other issues. So I really want to thank you for taking the extra time and for really being here and for facilitating the callers and folks on the wall and us with the loads of questions that we have as well. I think you have done excellent in terms of responding to the questions and putting forward the issues to the people. And we do look forward to having you back as soon as we possibly can. So, Bankie, I'm going to look forward to you making that arrangement with Janice and have Janice back here with us to follow up on this in the not too distant future. I think, Bankie, we definitely going to have to wrap up and give her a chance to get some rest with the family and all that. Yes, Janice. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and we will definitely look forward to having you back for part 2.
My pleasure, and I do look forward to coming back another time. Thank you so much.
All right,
yes,
Bankie,
Janice, I want to thank you again for coming on the topics and sharing your views and educating the general public. What's the plan for NRP in the future? And definitely, as you the feedback from those who are listening and calling have an interest in what the NRP is doing, more or less, and trust you as a leader. They have a lot of confidence in you, as you can realize the amount of comments we have and stuff like that. So definitely keep doing what you're doing. I mean, and stay within the community. And definitely, it seems like the general public really giving you that support. So what is next now when it comes to this SSZ, when it comes to for the NRP? I know you all had staged something in town when it comes to awareness and stuff. So is any plan within the future? I just have to chuck in that I'm wrapping out when as you're going out. And I want to thank all those who are listening, who share the link and keep supporting Yahsonn and myself on the topics and the Everything Agriculture show. Also this Friday coming up, let me put it out there, we're going to have Miguel Fleming, the PS of Agriculture from St. Kitts. And then next week, Tuesday, Yahsonn, we're supposed to have Azad Gopam. And then the following Wednesday, we have a new show starting with Dr. McWilliam Jade, Health Wellness. We'll be speaking about indigenous and natural medicine. And the topic will be West Indian medicine. So definitely looking forward for that show. That will be a new show coming up on Wednesday. And then the Friday, we should have Samal Duggan. So we have a pack show coming up, filling out this week, starting here with Miss Hodge and then coming out with me, and then next out of the month, full blow. And then on the 18th, and then the following week, the 11th, something like that. And then we have Cleon Stapleton. And then the 18th, we have the Premier, Mark Brantley. So as you see, we keep getting you guys entertained and keep you guys informed, where we just bring everyone, let them speak to the general public, and hear the views, and that's it. We're not content and holding any sides. Because we're trying to bridge that gap where the people can be open thinkers, get us the information, and make constructive, decision in a sense like that. So I want to thank you again for being here. But when it comes to any other awareness within the general public, any marches, whatever, anything before you go?
Right, yeah. So we are planning to continue to reach out and to enhance the awareness of the people. It's important for people to understand exactly what is at stake and what is being proposed. I do not have the dates, but I do know that we have something planned over in the Brown Hill area and up in the Gingerland area. And as soon as I get those dates finalized, I'll be sure to let you know so that you can share it on the show for us.
Greatly appreciated. Ira?
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
We want to give thanks, everybody. Do join us next week. What's today? Tuesday. Do join us on Friday for another edition of Everything Agriculture. Until then, enough love, everybody, guidance and protection.
Thank you.